Now there's a vague possibility that you have seen the previous video before this one, which would be beneficial, but it's not important. If you've not seen it, then maybe check it out afterwards. The previous video that I put up was about using the round robin function within Ableton. And that came from the concept of being able to create a 1-bar loop that was hopefully relatively interesting and engaging experience as a listener, despite the fact that it's essentially a repeating 1-bar loop. But obviously the point being, it doesn't actually repeat. But it's easy to explain that just by watching it. So this is the track that I actually started playing around with before I did that video and before I did that round robin, but it's what I started doing for this chance probability elements, which is something that I've kind of looked at covetously in terms of friends who had the Electron boxes, and they tell me, oh, you can do all these chance settings and we can, this hit might only hit every other bar, or whatever. And I thought, oh, that's great, I'd love to mess about with that. But obviously didn't realise that Ableton's had it for a little while now. I'm catching up. So this is the chance elements, which were available as a Max for Live download as one of the packs, one of the amazing packs that you get with Ableton. It was available for that within Ableton Live 10, maybe even 9, I don't know. But it's now embedded firmly in the timeline. As you can see, here it is. So if you go in to edit any kind of sequence information, as well as so first of all, it's down here, you don't have any, click this button, velocity, button underneath, chance. Then you click the channel, and you can see all of the chance information is about that. There's no samples on that one, so that's not going to show up. Some of them are quite varied. And again, I've used the randomness and the velocity range for some of them. In fact, I don't think I've used the velocity range on this one. No, it does not like it. But I used randomness. I don't tend to draw them in. There'll be certain things that I'll want consistently that underpin things. You'll see like this wooden gong sound. That's 100% chance. But other things that I want to be more random, you can see that they're more, what are we looking at there? Around 75% perhaps. So that's for the hi-hat. And again, these ones much more random. These are more, I mean that one's like less than 25%. That one's probably around 25%. Again, around there. And this is the end result, so I'll just play that on its own. So there's elements there. The gong sound is actually, it says gong there, but it's I'm not sure which one it is. They're all a bit weird. There you go. That's a symbol. I don't know why it's called a gong in there and a symbol in there. But anyway. Because it's made out of operator, it's effectively like an FM drum synth. Again, if you know a lot more about Ableton than I do, and that's not true, shout at me about it in the comments. That's great. But you can do a lot of sound shaping with this. So I've got the fine tuning, you've got phaser amount, and you can create a lot more interesting tones. That's interesting to me anyway. And then run them through the drum bus and it becomes all sorts. So on its own, quite minimal and stripped down. So I put in a more regular hi-hat and snare pattern. Just one of the Ableton drum packs, I think. And that's just, let me just have a look. I've got hit probability relatively consistent on there. Again, it's for the hi-hats. Snares are 100% because there aren't really any other snares the same, and the velocity is a little bit lower. But so that's those two things together give us this. Which is relatively interesting on its own. And then melodically, I just used the Arturia buckler easel. just click on, and that's using one of the sequences that I've just tweaked a bit. I probably tweaked it quite a lot, but that's one of the sequences, so it gives you something repetitive. But I also had a delay on it there, and Verta from Madrona, which is, I absolutely love that to pieces. And the delay that I'm using here is this Arturia one, which has lots of really interesting little features down here, including LFOs to slide things around a bit, which is fun. You can assign. I feel like I'm relatively late. As a result of coming from a hip-hop background, I feel like I'm relatively late to the joys of LFOs. It's only been in the last couple of years that I've really started going, oh, I could just stick an LFO to control that. And the sample and hold LFO is my kind of addiction. Now, you can do that just within standard audio effects. So if you just go into, I think it's in modulators. So you can drag on an LFO. It's not going to be very useful to us here because I'm not going to assign anything to it. But you can just create, it's called the random LFO, but it is basically a sample and hold, and you can map that to anything you want. So if you wanted to, I mean, I've got all of these mapped out, I can map it to any one of those. I'm not going to because I've already got one attached, but just if you're using the stock devices, which are amazing anyway, then you can do exactly the same thing. So back to this. So this is what it sounds like all together. Now the purpose was, you can see that I've got a complete stop here. So and that's like the rollover bit. So the idea was, can I make an 8-bar sequence that sounds relatively engaging, but I could just kind of leave to roll for 8 bars and I would be relatively stimulated. And the purpose was effectively to have something in the background while I was practicing scratching. I was learning new scratches, for example, and I would have something on that didn't just loop the same thing over and over and over again, which if you've ever practiced scratching at all, or probably other things as well, then that's fine for you because you're locked into the thing that you're doing, but for other people around you it probably becomes incredibly annoying. So maybe this is as much for everybody else who may be hearing it as much as it is myself. But the purpose is obviously using things like chance and LFOs and other things like that. We can create something that hopefully sounds relatively engaging over more than just the 8-bar period. They'll double tap on the start there. Don't know if you noticed second time around that this hi-hat didn't trigger. And I don't think that one did either. Which gives you like a lovely little moment of pause where it just, you have the emphasis of, right, we've dropped out completely, then we'll come back to the kick drum on its own with that gong. And then a little bit of space there, and then on the 2 everything comes back in again. So that was quite nice. Hopefully that's relatively useful. I mean, you can see how stripped down and really basic. That's just 3 tracks, which is, you know, I'm not even using like half of what you would have available to you on Live Light. So just to give you an idea of the potential of what you can do. There's no real limitations from having those because drum racks are the most amazing thing in the entire world. So there you go. I mean, that's just that pocket there. If you imagine each of these as an MPC bank, then a drum rack is quite a staggering amount of information. So I've got 4 banks on an MPC, for example. So that's one MPC there. Then there's another one there. And there's more, you can go further up and down. And if you think about all of that, but oh wait a minute, I can have 8 of them. So there's 2 MPCs per track and change. So there's like 16 MPCs in a Live Light, if that's the way that you want to look at it. Hopefully this has been interesting anyway, and it's something that I'm going to progress more. If you haven't watched the previous video, check that out because I think that's probably, it adds in a lot more features, but with obviously it doesn't have, or you'll see that it doesn't have the something like the buckler, so it doesn't have the melodic interest in, perhaps. But I'm going to continue to work on this, and there'll be future iterations in the coming, hopefully, weeks, at least months. Thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully that was beneficial.